Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Happy Friday to you. Chris, what's up, brother, man? It's good to see your face, man. I got your message the other day, and it is good to see you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, Facebook world. Good morning, Scott. What's up? Sandy, what's up? Amy, Facebook world. How we doing? We got Big Mike coming here. Joanna's coming in here. We're gonna let a couple people as we get ourselves on this Friday morning. Excited to bring on this guest here very shortly, Scott. Him and I have some similar backgrounds, and I just always love when I get to be able to have conversations with people and reconnect. And I'm going to share with you here very shortly. So in Facebook world, good morning. As always, guys, I love it when you say good morning. Good morning, Karen. Hope you're doing well. Feel free to put good morning in the chat. I do get, it's like, I'm like a child. It's like, I love when people get to share it. I get to see good mornings. It's like when I go wake up my kids. Good morning, Bryce. Good morning, Brielle. Happy day. Rise and shine. I'm the same way. So as adults, I think it's a great way to bring energy and to start us off. So Facebook world, good morning. Chad, good morning, buddy. And I'm letting a couple more people come on in here. Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, Chris. So just happy to have all of you here with us today. For those that are recording, Terry, good morning, who watch this later. We do have quite a few people who watch the recording. So good morning or good afternoon or good evening to you guys as well. My name is Brock Zevan. I'm a life coach, business coach, real estate agent, and a dad. And this morning on Fridays, I bring on guests. I bring on people that I've had conversations with, relationships with in the past, and got to know them. And Scott and I reconnected when we were down in Florida. We kind of chuckled. We're like, we live in the same city, the same area, but we had to go all the way to Fort Lauderdale to reconnect. And he was speaking the same time that I was speaking. And we were just kind of sharing a little bit of where we've been growing and what we've been doing. And he was sharing me about his story. And I was like, man, this would be really good for the show to be able to hear where you've been and what you went through into where you are today, because a lot of people they just think like success just happens overnight. Like, you know what, I'm just going to run to the store real quick and pick up some success and I'll be right back. Okay, it doesn't happen that way. It takes a lot of time, a lot of pain, a lot of challenges. The book that I'm writing, My Mess to Success, has that formula where it talks about pain, a purpose, and a plan. And you have to unfortunately go through that process in order to be able to see results. And so Scott, good morning, Donald. Scott and I have known each other for several years. So I'm ready. Scott, good morning, sir. How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good this morning. How are you doing, Brock?
Good, good. So like I said, Scott and I reconnected in Florida. And so I said, Scott, share with us a little bit about what you got. As I always tell people, it's up to you on how vulnerable you want to be and what you want to share. You heard Preston's story last week, and Scott's story is very similar. I was like, wow, man, I had no idea about that. I had no idea you were going through that. And so, Scott, if you don't mind kind of sharing us a little bit about what you got going on. I know you're in the lending world, but I know you also had a lot of different things happening to you. And so kind of walk us through your story, walk us through what you've been going through, and the floor is yours, brother.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody joining this morning, and I appreciate Brock having me on. So my story is not, unique by any means. Everybody's got something they've gone through. And so I don't really have a plan for what I'm going to say. So I'm just going to sort of start at the beginning. My name's Scott Hastings. I currently live in Mount Ulla, which I'm sure everybody knows where that is. It's between Salisbury and Troutman, about 12 miles outside of Mooresville. So it's pretty close. And I'm a mortgage loan officer. I've been in the business about 20 years, and I currently work for a company called Homebridge. I have a wife, Stacy, and a daughter, Lily, who's 19. She's a freshman at NC State University, probably majoring in some of the things that I majored in when I first went to college, which are partying. No, she's actually doing really well. So I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. It was a very small town when I grew up. But of course, it's gotten really big. Um, you know, this is a little bit, and I'll tip my card here. It's a little bit like an AA talk, really. It's like, tell us what it was like, what happened, and what it's like now. So that's kind of what I'm going to do. I was born in 1968 in the South. My parents were 21 years old, still in college, obviously unplanned, like many of my friends, that are my age, not unusual. And they, obviously weren't ready to have a kid, and my dad certainly wasn't ready. And so I grew up a lot with my dad was there, obviously, but I spent most of my time with my mom and my grandmother and my great aunt. So I spent a lot of time with women growing up, and which was all good. But I always felt, yesterday, Christian, if anybody was on here, was talking about anxiety. I always had a massive problem with anxiety, but I didn't know what it was until I was, I don't know, probably 18. But I just knew that I felt totally different outside of my body. I felt like I was looking at life through a movie. Always, like no self-confidence, not sure what I was doing. Always had an uncle who was, super cool, kind of was like, not like a dad, but I'm kind of like wanted to be my dad, He took me to the motorcycle races, he was just a cool guy. But turns out he was a heroin addict and an alcoholic, which, and all those things, which I didn't really know at the time. So maybe that sort of formed who I sort of chose to use as my heroes. And when I was probably, anyway, I had massive anxiety problems, couldn't eat, super skinny, really just in terror kind of all the time. And so went through all that as a child. And then when I was 16, I guess, I was working at Carowinds. That was my first job. It was the summer, and they were, it was a lot of kids that worked out there, so it was kind of cool. And then people were drinking Coors in the parking lot. And so I had, 3 Coors, and then my life was changed. I was like, where have you been all my life? I could talk to everybody, felt awesome. And then, immediately apologized the next day for everything I said. And, that was tended to be a cycle that I went through for a long time. So anyway, I ended up, all the kids I ran around with, all the guys and people I ran around with, basically, if you liked to party, then you were a friend of mine. It didn't really matter if you were, back then it was like you were like a stoner or a jock or, like the old 80s movies. You sort of fit into one of those groups. But I'm like, if you like to smoke pot and drink and all those things, really didn't matter what group you were in, we were hanging out. And so, I sort of somehow, got through high school, went to college. The only thing I really knew about going to college was that I just wanted to get away from home. And I went to UNC Greensboro with a friend of mine, and I lasted about a half a semester. I got a 0.4 GPA. I got arrested. I got sick. And for some reason, they didn't want me to come back. So that lasted 1 semester. Came back to Charlotte and went to Central Piedmont Community College, which a lot of people start. It's a great thing. It's a lot of people start classes at community college, but very few people finish. And I was sort of one of those guys. And I remember it was 1988 or 7. Anyway, I think it was 1987. I was standing at Central Piedmont between classes, smoking a cigarette, and I looked out and I saw a guy walking around across the courtyard, and I thought, man, that looks like Curtis, who I went to high school with, but he left after ninth grade. I don't know what happened to him. So our eyes connected, and it was like, hey, what's going on? And it turned out he had gone to the Navy for a couple of years, and he had gotten kicked out of the Navy, and we had just immediately left and got high, and we were friends and still are friends. But anyway, that sort of was the track I was on. And I, was just really just a mess. And all the people I ran around with were a mess. And I decided that I needed some discipline. And a friend of mine who had gone to, he had been sent to military junior college, but I had met him in Charlotte. He had decided he was going to go back for college because he was doing nothing in Charlotte either. And so I said, man, I need a serious something. Things were getting really bad in Charlotte. So I said, let's do it, So next thing I knew, it was exactly like Stripes. A postman knocked on my door. He had an airline ticket. I'd never been on a plane before. And I ended up in Fort Knox, Kentucky. I signed up to be in the basically Army Reserves. It was a 2-year program where if you would go to basic training and be part of the Army, then in 2 years you could become a lieutenant. And so I went to New Mexico Military Institute after this basic training in Fort Knox, which I got there. I remember I couldn't do one sit-up, no pull-ups, maybe one push-up. And the drill instructor said, man, we're going to work on you, boy. And they did. So ended up at military school, stayed there a year. And it was, it was good, actually. I, of course, hated it. But it kept me straight for a while because really nothing you could do. But I knew I wanted to get out of there. And I kept doing everything. I'd drinking all that stuff whenever I possibly could. So I was there a year, and while I was there, I applied to like East Carolina and Appalachian, and got into both of those, and ended up going to East Carolina. And I got my friend Curtis for some reason to go there with me. And we just kept up doing what we were doing. So I'm just going to fast forward through all this. Kept drinking, kept partying, drugs got heavier. Panic attacks got worse, conditions got worse, wasn't going anywhere. I ended up moving. I met a girl senior year of college from Sweden, thought, she could sort of keep me straight. And so I moved to Sweden with her, spent a couple of years there, and finally broke up, came back here. A lot of bad stuff happened, and got to a point where I woke up after a couple of days drunk, and I just said, I can't do this anymore. And so I was up all night in a panic attack for, this has happened many times, really nothing special about this time. But it just got to that point where you're like, I can't not drink and I can't drink. So I didn't know what to do. So I reluctantly went to an AA meeting, which I'd been advised for a long time to go to. And I thought, man, is there anything else you've got, Doc? But there really wasn't. And so it turns out that was the best thing that happened to me. And I went in the room and I ended up meeting people. And it turned out that all these people were the same people that I ran around with. They were funny as hell, had great stories. And it's the first time I felt like I belonged and was in the right place. So if anybody has any addiction problems or knows anybody that does, in my opinion, AA is the only solution. So anywho, that was in February 18th, 2001. And so I haven't somehow had a drink since then, or mind altering substance.
That's awesome.
So about a year after that, I met my current wife on a blind date. She's in the kitchen now, listening to everything I'm saying, probably wondering what the hell I'm doing. But we, that was right before the internet thing. So we met on a blind date, and we ended up getting married the following year. And I had one thing I skipped was I worked for a company in Sweden for about 8 years. It was an annual report advertising company. And so what we would do is we would sell advertising space in financial magazines all over the world. And since it was an annual report, there was only one deadline a year, which was perfect for me. And I lived here and worked for my boss in Sweden, and he never came. And so I could, be hungover, lay on the floor, show up when I wanted. It was just me. And as long as I met a deadline each year, I was good. And that was a great job for me. But I knew it would eventually end because everything was just going online. Well, it did end. It ended when I got back from my honeymoon and my wife was pregnant. We had found out she was pregnant, which was planned, of course. And so perfectly bad timing. And the guy I had gone to military school with, talked about earlier, his mother was a CEO of Duke Energy. And I remember I called her, and she knew a lot of people. And she actually basically got me a job working for the Charlotte Observer. But I wisely at that time thought, I don't really want to do that. I've heard about this mortgage thing. A friend of mine was a realtor, and they had a mortgage broker's office in their office. I said, that can't be that hard. I like numbers. I'll just go commission only, and surely I'll be able to, make it very quickly. And somebody had told me one time the saying, leap and a net will appear. Well, I said, you know what? I'm going to leap and a net will appear. Well, it turns out that the net will stretch all the way down and touch the ground. And that's basically where I was. So in retrospect, I'm really glad I did it. I'm in the right job. I love it. But it was a grind. It was rough. And I ended up working for a bank called World Savings Bank, who's not around anymore. Actually, First Union at the time bought them out. They were the ones who created the option arm loan. And so I would sell option arms. Ended up working for some guys. They were both Jamaican actuaries. And we started a mortgage company, and with their money and my sweat equity. And it got going really good. But then things, when 2008 happened, it just crashed. And really, not many people stayed in the lending industry at that time. I probably would have, but I was basically what I was involved in, I was a wholesale company. So I had mortgage account executives that worked for us. Our clients were really mortgage brokers. So everything just blew up and disappeared. And so I got out of the industry because it got out of me for a couple of years. Tried a couple things. And then in 2012, I got back into the industry, and I've been back ever since. So I joined Movement Mortgage then. A friend of mine, Chris, who sent me a text this morning, great guy. I had called him in 2012 and so, man, this isn't going too good. He said, well, you need to join me. This new company just started, Movement Mortgage. And so sign me up. So I stayed there for like 4 years, and then it got kind of too big for me, and I moved on. But anyway, that's really my story. I just know for myself, yesterday, a guy that works for / with me, he had said something about, you're really strong for not having a drink for 20 years. I'm like, I really don't even think about it anymore. But what I do think about it is if I have one drink, it's over. Anything I've built, any respect I've gotten from my family, any respect I have for myself, I mean, might as well just pull a hand grenade. And go ahead and get the divorce papers before I even take the drink. So anyway, that's my compact story. And if it helped anybody, I'm always willing to talk to anybody about anything. Yeah.
Well, I definitely appreciate it. And for those that are on here, I always say this, but when I ask somebody to share their story, it's not easy. Like like they're like, what? You want me to what? So I ask you to give him some love, give him a thumbs up, give him a heart on Facebook, give him, because when we have to talk about in our challenges and dig deep, there's moments where I could see in his because I reflect back to those time periods when I went into AA, and you don't know where to, like, I sometimes get emotional thinking about it because like people don't understand what it's like when you don't know like what you're in. Like you're like, well, if I have a drink or I don't have a drink, like where do and I can't talk to anybody because like people don't understand. Like I know it's wrong to have a bottle of wine in the morning, but I don't know how to handle it. And then when I went into those AA rooms, I was just like, oh, okay, these people get me. Like, okay, I feel like, all right, so you did that too. Holy wow. And then it's like like you said, that anxiety that Christian talked about yesterday, it's like released. And I could see you like you're building your story. And then you're like, even right now, like getting into the A rooms, like, oh man, it's like, whew. And and so I appreciate your story, and I appreciate everybody giving the loves, and I appreciate the comments. And you have to look at Facebook later, Scott, on this because it's truly it's inspiring to hear. And you also have to understand, everybody. It took me quite some time, but like I'm sure, Scott, if I was to ask you, hey Scott, how many times do you share that story daily? How many times do you share that? Probably not every day. Probably not very often. So when you have to go back inside of yourself and be like, okay, I haven't shared this. Like you said, last time you probably talked about it was an AA meeting, and who knows when that, like, so we don't talk about this very often, guys. And so Scott, hats off to you, man, for sharing your story today and reaching out to people and understanding, because when we speak, and the main purpose of this call and why we do this show is we can't change your life off of this. We only talk for 20 minutes, 25 minutes. But hopefully his story, listen to Chad's story, listen to Preston, Greg, Christian, whoever's on here, that maybe it triggers something inside of you today. Maybe it triggered something in you to go and pivot. And I was listening to this show on Clubhouse this morning on pivoting. Okay. I don't really like the word pivoting, but in this case, I'm going to use the word pivoting because at certain point, Scott, you pivoted. You had to make a change, because if you didn't, you'd probably be like somebody on the side of the road that we would see and be like, man, I wonder how he got there. I wonder what like what went on in his head to get him into that place. So for those that are on this call today, I appreciate it. If you have a comment, Scott, in the chat, if you can for me, put your email, your name, your phone number in the chat. I'll take that and I'll put it in the Facebook group page as well. So that way, maybe if somebody reflected, somebody, he's a successful mortgage broker now. He's in the industry. And that's why I like when he said, like in 07 and 08, I was there. Okay. Very few people in this industry were there and still today. I was talking to Kastner, Mike, this morning, and we were running numbers, and I'm sure Scott can look up the lending numbers as well. And Chris is on here as well. And a couple people also, Joseph, that are in the lending world, just like in the real estate world. Okay. And Mike and I were talking 8% people since July, 4 months ago, since July, 8% of real estate agents have left our industry. Okay. Give me a thumbs up or, yeah, I'll just say a thumbs up or agree or disagree. Do you think the next 6 months are going to get better or are going to get worse for our industries in the next 6 months? Okay. And I don't like to bring up negativity, but I don't want to, I don't want us to make, I don't want us to confuse reality because it's going to take place. And Scott has learned how to work through it. Many of us are on this call have learned how to work through it. But if you haven't been in this business more than 4 years, you need to reach out to high level people in your environment. A Scott, a Greg, a Chad, a Chris, a Tammy, whoever it is. Like Joseph just said here, it's only as bad as you decided it is. Absolutely. Right, D? It depends on the individual. It's up to you to make the decision, just like it was up to Scott to make the decision. I'm pretty sure, Scott, you would agree that if you didn't make your decision and pivot, you would not be here today. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, 100%. And if I could just say one thing about what you're talking about the industry, there's a guy that you met down in Florida, and I won't mention his name, but he was basically a really inspiration to me. They call for 3 hours a day, every day, and he made a ton of money this year. And that's what it's about, is double, tripling, quadrupling down. It's not a secret, you know. It's, and I'm talking to myself too, it's relationships. Call as many people as possible and you'll make it. You know what I mean? I'm actually excited about what's going on over the next 6 months, because all the people that aren't serious are going to go out of the industry. And when this thing turns, which it will, it'll be a massive amount of business, and there'll be a lot less people to get a bigger share of it. So anyway, you know.
No, man, I like, you're absolutely right. For those, triple, quadruple your business right now. Listen to things, listen to your environment, reach out to Scott if something was reflected on you. Donald, thank you for your message. Chris, thank you for your message. Terry, thank you guys all who left a message, gave him a thumbs up, gave him a heart. Reach out to the people like this. Find people in your business, in your organization. I got a guy down in Florida real quick. He's under 30 years old. He's trying to figure out where to grow. I said, what I need you to do, and I'm telling this to all entrepreneurs, whatever industry you're in right now, okay? Okay, for me, I'm 44 years old. So I find the people who are in their 40s, my coach is 45, okay? Most of the people I'm associating myself with are in their mid 40s, okay? So my coach is 45 years old. He literally has the same age kids as me. He was a school teacher as me. He has a lot of similarities in me. So why do I do that? And why I'm telling you to go find people in your industry around the same age, find out who the successful people are and call them. That's literally what I do when I'm trying to find somebody that I need to attach myself to. I hunt you down. Chad's one of them on here. He's in South Carolina, and he would say that I was relentless, and I kept texting him and reaching out to him. He just sent a message in here: purpose, way to push through and pursue your purpose. Okay, purpose in what you're doing. I was purposeful in reaching out to finding high level people, and I found them, and then I attached myself to. People say, "Well, Brock, did they answer?" You better believe they answered. Because if I ask Scott, if somebody called Scott up and said, "Hey, Scott, I'd like to talk to you," do you think Scott's going to say, "No, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I don't have time for you right now. Oh no, yeah, you're suffering through that? No, I can't. Sorry, I'm busy." Okay, just like when Scott reached out to people, somebody helped him out. So people who are higher level, people who've been through the BS, the pain, and the agony are willing to help. So you got to attach yourself to those people, call them up, find them out, whatever age you are, whatever industry you're in, they are there. They are successful. Call them up and ask them, talk to them. Ask them for coffee. They will do it. They will help you, but you got to help yourself first. Guys, it is 8:45. We told us in our leadership meeting that we are going to always end at 8:45. And so I want to keep ourselves accountable to the same time period. Guys, I appreciate you being on here. If you're watching this in the recording, please make your comments. Please make your posts. Love on us, like us. If there's something you want us to hear, if you something for us to get better at, please don't hesitate to put out there too. That's what this is all about. If you're brand new to the show, put your name out here, put your information out here, put yourself in a position so you can help network and network for yourself. Scott's information is on here. Scott, Love you, man. I appreciate you being on here. Thank you for sharing your story this morning with all of us. Guys, happy Friday to you. Have a phenomenal weekend. We'll be back here Monday at 8:15 and looking forward to it. Guys, thank you so much. Have a great day. We'll see you later.